Well, hello out there. You're here with John Thomas Gillum, and I am sitting here at a Starbucks. And I am finishing up on a video that I downloaded on YouTube. This is the second part of that video. Anyhow, I want to talk a little bit more about these quarter-mile tracks that we can put above our pre-existing highways and freeways, and how you take advantage of that open-air space above our current freeways. Highways, freeways, I don't really know. Highways, I think, because I'm uneducated in that area, I don't know really the difference between the highway and freeway. Most of my experience growing up has been on freeways. I guess the highways are the ones that kind of goes straight out and through, I guess, open land maybe, not through populated residential business area. I don't really know the difference. But anyhow, we take advantage of that free airspace above where the vehicles commute back and forth to go to wherever they're going on our freeways, and build these quarter-mile tracks, as I said in my earlier video, and the multi-purpose use for these tracks. They can work as landing pads for helicopters, for fires. We can even set it up where they can pick up water on these quarter-mile tracks. So they would be emergency platforms that you can use for water dropping helicopters. You can use for emergency equipment during a disaster of some type. The highway patrol can use them on occasion, often as sort of observing the traffic and the flow and what's going on out there. And like I said, multi-use. It's a brilliant idea. You were basically more and more people are buying these automobiles with extremely high horsepower, and most people know that you don't need that much horsepower to commute to work, or commute to the mall, or commute to pay some bills, or commute to take the kids on a trip. You don't need it to commute to go out of state to visit relatives. You don't need that much horsepower to commute to a national park. You don't need that much horsepower to commute to the malls to do some shopping. You just don't need that much horsepower, and it's there, and it's continuing to get. The numbers are up and up and up. Back in the 60s, it was 300, 350 was a lot of horsepower. Now we're at 750, 1,000. Production cars, the horsepower is going up and up and up, and they're able to achieve speeds of 200 miles an hour. In the 60s, you were lucky to get 120 miles an hour. The speeds are good, and I could be wrong on these numbers, but the horsepower keeps continually going up. And, as long as you put the horsepower there in the vehicle, particularly males are going to be tempted to exercise that horsepower. Now, when you place laws there that regulate the speed in which you can drive on any given road here in America, particularly I'm just speaking for California, but this is statewide. You're governed by these laws that tell you can only go so fast. You can't involve yourself in exhibition of speed. You can't involve yourself in high-speed driving. We're regulated by speeding limits. But we all know that as long as that horsepower is there, and you don't need it for no other reason but to go fast and to prove that your car has the capability of going fast. And a man is always going to be tempted to exercise that horsepower. And then when you do, if you just so happen to be in an area where the police officer catches you, highway patrol police officer, city police, or whomever, and you're cited, you've got the burden of a fine. It's going to affect your insurance rate. It's going to have a lot of. Nobody wants to be burdened with a speeding ticket, but we're sort of setting up Americans by not allowing them, not giving them the opportunity, or making it available to them. Let me say it, making it available to them to be able to exercise that horsepower. And man loves to compete with his fellow man. It's always my car's faster than yours. I'm pretty sure I can get you, and all. That's a normal competitive behavior in human beings, particularly in males. Now, most men, particularly younger males, don't want to wait for some quarter-mile racing event at some local track that's 60 miles away or 10 miles away or 50 or 80 miles away. They don't want to wait till that event that could be several months away or several weeks away. We've got a lot of people who like to do this street race, and I just seen a news report this morning of a street race. Well, they're not certain. They think there might have been a street race that led to an accident, and some of the public transportation got involved in this accident. It looked pretty nasty, and some guy lost his wife, or somebody lost somebody in this god-awful little accident. But those things happen. What can we do? But the more and more we and even the overall image, if I can use that, the overall design of a lot of these cars that we're designing currently give to that sport, fast. Look at this car, sporty. This car's meant for track. This car's meant to go fast. This market, so that excites the male. The male gets excited. He gets excited, and when it's there and you're excited like that, it's miserable to have to know it's there and not be able to use it because you're regulated by these laws. So here's the deal. We put these quarter-mile tracks above our pre-existing highways and freeways. All you're doing is just building above where everybody's commuting. Quarter-mile length. There's plenty of freeways where there's a quarter-mile open-air space. The noise will be no greater than the noise that is generated by the automobiles that are traveling on the freeways. Most cars that would go on these quarter-mile tracks to race would be most of the production cars that are built in America and overseas that are bought here in America. And some of these cars that people buy and they tune and they put aftermarket parts on to increase the performance of it. Some of them can be loud, but it shouldn't be an issue because you can set the track up where it will kind of reduce the noise that may occur with some vehicles racing down this track. But there's multi-purpose use for these, as I said. Emergency personnel pads. If we set with global warming, we're going to have more and more fires break out. More and more, less places for these water dropping helicopters to figure out where to get their water at. They got to go to the local lakes. Well, what if the lake's not within distance of where the fire's at? A lot of these fires are going to start taking place within the cities that we live in. Why? Because there's so much electronical devices that are going to be running and drawing current and all this, all this alternative energy as well. Sooner or later, the alternative energy, when the heat rises, heat is resistant, and that makes the things that the current is flowing through become more susceptible to fires. And more susceptible just to a sudden spark on a fire on these. So we might see more and more fires take place within our cities because of the technology and the energy to function these electric devices and so forth. And with electrical cars on the rise, and as heat rises and electrical cars are built, you're going to see more and more electrical fires in these electrical cars. So we need these emergency pads that would be above our current highways that'll also work as quarter-mile racetracks. Now people will say, well, how are you going to use it if it's for an emergency pad if you've got people racing it? Well, during an emergency, you shut it down. Just as you block off a road when emergency takes place. You block off a road and don't allow anybody to go in there. Through the use of your smartphones, the electronic devices you got, it'll be communicated to you that the track's shut down currently and being used for emergency personnel. And somebody might say, well, how are you going to get a helicopter on these quarter-mile tracks if you've got all these sound barriers for the walls, or the walls that are going to protect the vehicles from not, let's say one loses control and smashes into the end of the track and rolls over onto the traffic below. How do you prevent that? Well, you design the walls where it catches the vehicle so it doesn't fly over the edge. That's a no-brainer. then you say, well, if as long as you got these walls there, well, then how the hell's the helicopter going to land on these tracks? How's it going to use that as a pad for emergency purposes? How's it going to land? Well, you got to use the engineer brain. You either via the use of hydraulics, you either lower the protective walls in the area or you raise the track surface. A section of it will raise up via hydraulics. Then the helicopter can land on it, and then have a way where you can either, by means of stairs or something, come down from the helicopter platform and walk around the rest of the open area of this quarter-mile track. But there's multi-purpose uses for these elevated tracks. Number one, it's for Americans to exercise that horsepower. If you've got a Porsche, you've got a Dodge Hellcat, a Jaguar, a Lamborghini, a Mercedes, BMW, a Tesla, and you want to go up there and you want to exercise your horsepower with somebody you ran into while let's say you're traveling down the 10 freeway. And some young dude wants to race you, and you've retired from as a lawyer, and you're in your Porsche 911. You know, well, what the hell? I ain't got nothing else to do. You cruise up, go on this track. It'll be set up. It'll be all automated. It'll be completely automated. You'll pay a fee all the males, females, whoever want to race on these tracks will pay a yearly fee to race on them. You'll pay when you get there to engage in a race. No spectating. You're not going to have people sitting on these platforms above the freeway spectating and throwing wrappers and cups and getting high on smoking joints or whatever they're doing up there. None of that's going to go on, or boozing it up. No boozing it up at the tracks. Matter of fact, as part of the process of getting on there and racing on these tracks, when you get there, it'll be like a little pay point. Be like using the Versatella to get some withdraw money, or going and going to a kiosk and you're paying for something. You go up there, you'll swipe your driver's license, print pad to make sure you're the same person with the driver's license, to make sure the same person that raced in the car, the thumb matches the person on the driver's license. An identity print pad, then a breathalyzer. You just blow in there to make sure you're not under alcohol. The other individual that's going to get engaged in the race goes through the same process. You put your money in the machine. You zip down the track. You get your ticket at the end. Your time ticket for how fast your car went, and whether or not you won the other person, or if you're just taking your car down there to see how well it'll do in a quarter mile. And you get your print, and maybe on the back of it you can have a discounts on automobile insurance, or discounts on aftermarket performance parts, or discounts on a two-piece chicken at KFC. So you can get a lot of people to involve themselves in this idea, but they're going to be totally automated. What you do is you use lasers to scan the surface of these tracks. They're going to sort of work like you see these guys at these regular quarter-mile tracks that get on these tow trucks or these vehicles that they use at these tracks to do maintenance and everything, and they kind of drive down there and visually look at the track to see if there's any debris, any oil, any antifreeze that can be a danger to those driving down these tracks. But in this case, we're going to use lasers. The lasers will literally scan the surface of the track, and the laser picks up anything that doesn't allow the laser to travel its complete distance, and there's some debris there. And they'll also scan for any liquids on the tracks. And then when there's debris or dirt begins to take place, an automated wheel, like the street sweeper you see that sweep the streets, will come up from the ground, sweep the track, sweep all the debris off, and go back in there, and it'll have ability to spray chemicals that clean oil and antifreeze or transmission fluid or gear oil. It'll have all that to develop on. It'll be all used via lasers, video cameras, so you can watch after you engage in a race. Others can then purchase the right to watch that race through the World Wide Web. So you're going to generate revenue by people paying for this to race at these tracks every year through AAA or DMV or whatever. AAA, not DMV couldn't handle it. AAA, and then you will pay. So you'll pay a fee through AAA to race at these tracks. You will pay to engage in a race when you go there, and then and on top of that, you've got, what was I going to throw out? There's something else I was going to throw in there. Another how it's going to generate more revenue outside of that. It's gonna be a win-win situation. You're gonna have more males are gonna get pumped up over their victories. Oh man, I beat him. More activity at the dealerships. More of these service departments, dealerships. The guy with the Porsche is going to go in there. Well, I lost a race and I should have won it. Let's tune this up. Let's get some new tires put on this. Can you throw some aftermarket parts on there? A lot more activity at the local dealerships. A lot more activity in these performance parts makers. Because now you've got the right to exercise that horsepower. At the very moment. You don't have to wait 6 months. And when it's there, it excites. When it excites the male, he gets more into it. Then he wants to trade in his 911 for a 933 or a 918. And so there's more revenue being generated and this is how you get people to spend, is you allow them to express their free will and their desire to have and to exercise that horsepower. So it's a win-win situation. And the concerns that people will have is, what about the noise? Do I want to hear cars racing down these tracks above the freeway at 2:00 in the morning? I just don't. Well, we'll work on this sound problem, which won't be a problem at all. There's easy ways to combat the sound. It'll come from these tracks. Oh, what about people? I don't want people hanging out on my street waiting to get on these tracks. It just is not. Well, you build them where there's easy access, and then there will be some type of a gate operation that will only allow so many vehicles in at a time, and then you'll have to wait and you'll get some sort of a beep through your electronic device, smartphone, Apple phone, personal computer, laptop, tablet, that'll tell you there's no waiting and you can go in there and do some racing. I don't think it'll be become that congested, but it's going to all where you place the tracks at is how you determine that. Well, how are they going to get onto these tracks? You're going to use helicopters to drop them on these tracks? Well, how they easy act the same way you get onto a freeway through an on-ramp, or the same way you see the traffic above the freeway through an overpass. You create those possibilities on how to the ways to get onto these tracks. You don't build them in the areas where that's going to be a problem. You try to do that survey the area and see where the best place to put any particular any of these tracks on any given highway. Survey and see where it's going to work out. It's a win-win situation. You've got an emergency platform that they can be used. They can be used as emergency platforms. With global warming, we're going to have more fires, more flooding, more problems. More flooding means more accidents on the freeway, more need to airlift people who are injured in these accidents. Nowadays, it's not as easy to access these, but with these platforms, you make it more possible to access. You're not expanding on the pre-existing freeways, which is going to give you a problem with having to buy out pre-existing development that may be taking place. You're building above the current freeways, see? And you obviously don't want to build them in areas where there might be development in the future planned in that area. It's a win-win situation. You're generating some revenue right here, and they're going to have multi-purpose. They're going to be totally operated, they're going to be. They'll generate their own energy. They will it will be all automated. You ain't gonna need somebody on there because these brushes will come up, video cameras, lasers to scan the surface. Everything's gonna be all automated and everything's gonna work, and it'll literally generate its own juice necessary for it to function. You know, as the divider between the two cars that are racing down the track can literally, you can set wind turbines. I know this sounds, people are going to want wind turbines. What are you going to do? Well, every time a car races down the track, you create that force of air that'll turn these turbines. That'll charge I want to make sure I say that right. Turbines and not turbines. I have a habit of confusing turbines with turbines. But anyhow, you're gonna put turbines in the center area that splits the two lanes that they'll be racing on, and as the vehicles go down, then these turbines will turn and generate energy that'll then be used to store in the batteries that'll light the whole facility. Now remember, you're not going to have spectating. You're not going to have vending machines. You're not going to be feeding people up there. They're not going to have coffee up there. No spectating. You go up there, you pay, you race your cars down the track, and if the freeways are congested, and you say, "Well, I don't want to get on the freeway right now." Well, I'll go try out my car and see how well it does in a quarter mile. Boom, you've got that ability. It's a win-win situation. You've got to look at it in that way. You can say, then the big thing is liability. Here's the big thing that we're going to deal with is the liability issue. Oh God, what if people are going to get killed up here on these tracks? What about an earthquake? What if an earthquake happens and the track falls down on the people below it? Well, what if an earthquake takes place and the overpass falls on the people below it? Where the freeway that's elevated to change onto another freeway, where the interchanges are. What if an earthquake takes place and that falls down? That's not an issue. An earthquake's not going to be an issue. The way these are made is the same way you build the rest of the stuff you build on our highways. It's earthquake. It's able to resist the impact of an earthquake. So you eliminate that issue. Now you got the issue will be these accidents. Well, here's the thing. When you agree to race at these tracks and pay that yearly fee through AAA, you are going to sign a release of liability. That means that every time you engage in a race on one of these tracks above our highways, if you croak, if your car blows a tire and rolls and you smash into the end and you're dead, it's a tough titty policy. Once you pay to race on these tracks yearly, you waive the right to the AAA, the state, or the city to be responsible for your death if an accident takes place while you're racing down there. So we eliminate the liability issue. That's the greatest and will be the greatest issue. We've eliminated that. You ask how many guys would race on these tracks if they're maintained and safe and good. If you had to sign a release of liability to AAA or the city or the state, or state or whatever, for racing on these tracks, most guys would say, as long as they're well maintained, I don't care. I don't mind signing that release of liability. I mean, I wouldn't. I know that I got enough confidence in myself to drive a car down a quarter mile as fast as it'll go without wrecking. And even getting a flat or even having something happen, I could still control my vehicle well enough to preserve my life. So that ain't going to be an issue. Liability thing is not going to be an issue because you're going to waive that. You're going to sign what is going to be necessary to sign to waive any legal responsibilities to the state or AAA or whomever. So we've eliminated that. And you say, well, what happens if an emergency breaks out and people want to race on that particular track? Well, tough titty. Emergencies break out. Sometimes you got to things happen. But that's the multi-use for these tracks. They're going to have a multi-use purpose. They're going to be able to self-maintain themselves. Caltrans can use them on occasion during a construction, some road work or something. They sort of be an area where they can go up in there at one particular area of it where they can kind of get together and discuss what they're getting ready to do. There's multi-uses for this. And it's not like they're going to be all over the place, but in the areas where we think that it'll give and it'll work out in that area. But that's the answer. As long as the horsepower is going to continue to go on these the automobiles that are being manufactured here in America by the automakers here in America and automakers abroad, and these cars are on the roads here in America and we're governed by laws, it's a win-win situation, And then man is going to be more tempted to go fast when he's not on these tracks, which means the local police and highway patrol can capitalize on that. That's more speeding tickets. That's more bling bling for the state. So it's a win-win situation. Pretty much a win-win situation on this idea. And I'm sure they'll probably start breaking ground within the next 30 days. Anyhow.